it may end up being one of the biggest ways that people find your podcast within Spotify. They come across a 30-second clip. They say, wow, that's interesting. I'd like to jam on that. Let me go check it out. That's what Instagram used to be. Instagram was different back in the day. It was different where there wasn't as much content from podcasts. So when you saw a 30-second clip, you might actually watch 20 seconds of it and say, oh, that's interesting. Let me check out the full episode. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode number 128, the best 3 things to measure and how they affect each other. Today, for episode number 129, a little bit of a different episode based on stuff that's going on in the industry as we speak. Spotify is changing. What does that mean for you? So a couple things are happening over at Spotify. Spotify essentially came out and said that I don't know if it was in this exact words, but they're essentially saying that they're ready to compete with YouTube. So many of you may already know that Spotify has a video version where you can upload the video of your podcast through Spotify for Creators. Many of you might not know that yet, but that is a thing where you can literally log into Spotify for Creators, go into your episodes, and then you're able to, I think that you just click the 3 dots at the end of the line of the episode, and then there's an add video button. And it's just like YouTube. You drag the video, drop the video, title the video, thumbnail the video, bada bing, bada boom, you're off to the races. So we'll talk a little bit about that and why that's connected to what we're talking about today. But one of the other big things is Spotify is now beta testing clips in various markets. So in the US, they're doing it. I'm not sure where else. I'm guessing probably US, Canada, maybe Europe. But I know for sure in the US. So when you log into the dashboard, you go to your Spotify for Creators dashboard, and you go down to episodes, and you click into an episode where you'd be able to see the specific stats, it'll say whatever it is, listens, all that stuff. There'll be a little drop down that says clips, and then it'll say beta because they're beta testing it. Essentially, it looks like Spotify is trying to create its own, I don't want to say social media platform because I don't think that's what they're doing. But they're trying to create a way for your podcast to get found within the Spotify app by sharing clips from your podcast. So just imagine if you could host your podcast on Instagram, or at least let's pretend that somebody could play a full podcast episode on Instagram, and it was set up where people were going to see your clips, they were going to get exposed to your clips, and then the potential for them to listen would be there. I think that's a really good opportunity. There's a lot of potential there. Now, they're beta testing it. So I don't really know what's going on behind the scenes yet. There isn't really data on how does that look. I haven't seen any of these clips when I'm on Spotify, but they are testing them. And if the test goes well, that's something that they're going to roll out, and I cannot imagine that test wouldn't go well. So that's part 2 of this. And then the third thing is Spotify is really leaning into SEO. They're leaning into search engine optimization. So somebody followed me on Instagram recently, and I try to do this. I don't always do it because I drop the ball on many things in life. But I sent this person a message and said, hey, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to add value. And they said, oh my goodness, I can't believe you sent me a message. I've been listening to your podcast, and I love it. Awesome. Cool. Where did you find it? And they said, I literally searched this name. I searched this title. Maybe it was 3 ways to blah, 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 blah. And you're the first thing that came up. And I said, interesting. And then when you look at the data, that episode has, let's say, 300 times more listens than the episode before it and the episode after it. Why? 300 times? Yeah, about 300 times. Because that episode hit on SEO. So all the people that saw that episode were people that searched for a title like that or something similar. That is something that Spotify is really leaning into. So Alan, my business partner, and Alan is the co-host of NLU, we were having discussions earlier this year about whether Apple or Spotify was going to win the podcast race. I thought it was going to be Apple because they had such a big head start, but honestly, it doesn't really seem like they care that much about competing with Spotify. Spotify is coming for the crown, for sure. Another thing, I don't know if we talked about this in the past, but Spotify also now has it set where you can literally comment on someone's podcast within the player, and then the host can see it and they can respond. So essentially, the audio podcast is turning into kind of like a YouTube channel where people can comment on your episodes and you can comment back. We're really turning into a big commenting economy, where when you go on YouTube, I mean, the amount of comments these videos are getting are wild. Instagram posts, some of these big Instagram posts, it's different than it used to be. The comment section was never like it is today. Maybe the likes were there, maybe the shares were there. The comments are completely different now. There's a lot going on with the comments. Spotify is trying to get ahead of that as well. So what does that mean for you? A couple things. There's a lot of people out there that have said and may continue to say that a podcast is audio only and video is completely separate. I would say by definition, yes, a podcast is audio and it suggests an RSS feed, and video does not require an RSS feed. That's a whole different thing. But if you have been on the fence about whether or not it's time to do video, I would venture to guess that now would be a good time. Now, I'm not saying you have to. I'm not shaming you if you don't. But between YouTube, which is, I believe, the number 2 way now to get your podcast found, and Spotify, there's a lot of opportunity out there. So that's my first thought. Second thought, what's the downside of uploading video to Spotify potentially? I looked at the fine print, I did some research, and based on what I found, it looks like, and again, I'm not 100% certain, but let's stay with me on this. If you upload a video, all of those stats, so let's say 500 people watch the video, none of those stats are going to go back to your podcast host. So we use Buzzsprout. If somebody watches, let's say 500 people watch our latest video, that stat is not going to go back to my host. Buzzsprout does not know that because those listens were not from the RSS feed. They're from the video. Just like on YouTube, if you're uploading native video to YouTube, you're not doing the auto upload from your host, you have to track those numbers separately. Same thing's going to happen with Spotify. Now, here's the thing that was a little bit confusing, because that's not that big a deal depending, but if it gets to the place where, and it might be there, where you upload video and every single person that watches or listens is considered a view, that could Jeff things. Because, and Jeff means to mess up. We say it all the time at NLU. It's a weird story. It's a long story, but it could screw things up. Because maybe the analytics aren't as good. That's one. Now you have to track multiple places. That's two. If you are looking for sponsors and ads and affiliates, how does that affect it? Are people willing to pay different based on views versus listens? Yes. There's a lot that could happen with that. We're going to be uploading all our videos from YouTube to Spotify. And we're going to keep doing YouTube the way we're doing it. But at some point, we're most likely going to go back and upload all of our 1,900 episodes, that's going to be a whole thing. But I think it's worth doing. Especially since video is relatively new on Spotify, that means they're probably going to push it, just like YouTube was pushing YouTube Shorts. They still are. Does it matter? That's a whole different conversation. But the tracking of analytics might end up becoming a little bit wonky. So that's something to note. I'm not 100% sure if you upload video, if that means all of the listens are going to be considered views. And your host is going to get none of those. So if that's the case, right, there will be no listens from Spotify, essentially. You won't, on your host profile, you'll never get a notification that says X amount of these listens came from Spotify. Because if they're all measured as video, none of them go to the RSS feed.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tarryn McCarthy, and I'm host of the Business of Happiness podcast. When I met Kevin and Alan 2 years ago, I had no idea of how much impact they would have not only on the success for my business, but also on my life. They've given me enormous perspective and true strategies, true tactics to take in my everyday business plan and in my life plan to make an even greater success. Kevin and Alan, thank you so much. I couldn't even begin to express my gratitude for all you've done for me. And if you're looking for similar mentorship, I highly recommend these incredible experts at the Next Level University.
The other potential downside for you, depending on who you are, is, and it's kind of already a thing if you're doing it this way, but you're unable to use any dynamic insertions from your podcast host. So Buzzsprout, you can have dynamic intros or dynamic pre's, midtros, endings. You can have dynamic stuff, which means that you can change it whenever, and then it will do all the episodes, right? So if you don't want to use the same calls to action, you can have dynamic ones. Oh, we have this new event coming up. Okay, that event passed. Now we're going to change the dynamic ad. You can't do that on video. It doesn't work that way. Right, you can't do that. So that's another potential downside. I don't care about it because everything we do is it's custom ads anyway, the way we're doing it, and it's all for us. It's not for anybody else. Nothing is really time stamped. I don't really mind, but that is another consideration. The other thing is, if you are, so here's my thought, and I don't have anything to prove this, but this is just a thought. If you do have clips, let's say you're not uploading your video to Spotify, but you do have video clips that you're creating for social media promotion. If you're going to share them on Spotify, somebody is used to seeing it. I don't necessarily know if they're going to listen if they come to your profile if you don't have video. The beta testing of these clips is a really big opportunity because it may end up being one of the biggest ways that people find your podcast within Spotify. They come across a 30-second clip. They say, wow, that's interesting. I'd like to jam on that. Let me go check it out. That's what Instagram used to be. Instagram was different back in the day. It was different where there wasn't as much content from podcasts. So when you saw a 30-second clip, you might actually watch 20 seconds of it and say, oh, that's interesting. Let me check out the full episode. Now, it doesn't really work that way on Instagram because it's so hooky. You've got to catch somebody right away. Spotify is kind of leaning into that. So what do these changes mean for you? It might be a good opportunity to get on video if you haven't yet. It's probably a good opportunity to get on Spotify video if you're not, as long as you're okay with whatever analytical pain in the butt that might create. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get any less listens in real life. It just might seem like it. Beta testing the clips along with Spotify may be worth it. Throw them out, see what happens. You never know. You never know. And if I've learned anything over the last 8 years, early adopters oftentimes get rewarded. And all that means is right now they're beta testing it, which means if you're doing it, you might get all of the upside of being somebody who started the thing early. And is there any downside to it? Probably not, no. If you already have the content, it's super easy to upload. It's not hard at all. Do I know where it's going or what it's going to do? No, but I already have it. So it's not like I'm investing more money to do it. We've already created the content. We might as well throw it out there. So yeah, Spotify is changing, and it means a lot of different things for you. I think most of it is opportunity. I don't really see any big downsides. I know that a lot of people are going to feel pressured to do video, and I'm not saying you have to. There are a lot of podcasts out there that are crushing without video. That they exist, for sure. Do I think it's going to be that way forever? I really think we're going into a video desire where most people are desiring video. I just think that's the way it's going to continue to go. But there's always going to be space for audio because you can't exactly watch a video while you're driving, and you can, but it's reckless. So those are the things that are changing about Spotify. I think that's what it means for you. And do what you will with that information. We're going to be testing out stuff so I can report back with what I've seen. I haven't seen any drastic changes yet in anything, but in fairness, we went from creating a clip every day, 2 clips every day for every episode, to creating only a couple a week, just because we weren't sharing all of them on social media, so it didn't make sense to create that many. Now it might make sense as we get into 2025 to create a clip from every episode and then throw it up on Spotify, see what happens, as well as the video. So yeah, those are my thoughts. We're going to test it. I can report back, but I think it's an exciting time. The other thing too is I think Spotify is really looking to, similar to YouTube, they're looking to help people monetize. And I can get the exact numbers. I'll have to look. But YouTube, there's a lot of people now that are making some money. Maybe it's not the best money. Maybe it's not life-changing money. But YouTube's doing a good job to try to pay creators. There's a couple of people we work with that are getting, and again, they have lots of listens. We're talking, I don't know, maybe like 500,000 listens or views, a month. So they're making some decent money, but it's taken them a long time to get there, right? But I think Spotify is trying to create their own little version of that. There's going to be requirements. You're going to have X amount of subscribers, and I'm guessing X amount of watch time, listen time, before you'll be able to get any level of monetization. But that's also something good to know. It might be easier to monetize that way through Spotify as opposed to YouTube because it's somewhat newer. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. If you're not looking at your stats on Spotify, now is the time to do it for sure, because there's a lot of new things that are rolling out. And the other thing too is Spotify's got money. They have enough money to really, really grow this, and they seem to be very, very focused on podcasting. You can host your podcast with Spotify. You can't host your podcast with Apple. It doesn't really work that way. It's different. So Spotify is really making a play. Spotify bought Anchor. They've made a lot of acquisitions within the podcast space. That is for a reason, for sure. So yeah, that's what I would say. It means for you, there's opportunity if you want to chase it. As always, is there anything else that I would say about this? No, I wouldn't say anything else yet. I still don't think Spotify's a great host. I don't know. I'm a fan of Buzzsprout. No, I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I've just used them for a long time. And we have clients who have a bunch of other hosts, and I've never found one that I like nearly as much. I feel like they're all messy and they're complicated and their stats aren't great, and you got to pay for extra analytics. I don't know what Spotify's price is. I think they might actually be free. I don't know. But I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of their host. All right, cool. We're going to get out of here. As always, if you are looking for a group of podcasters where the talk is always about podcasting and stuff like this gets talked about all the time, we have a Facebook group called Podcast Growth Nation. I try to do a live in there every week based on what I'm learning as a podcaster or what clients are going through or whatever it may be. So we'll have the link in the show notes below. It's totally free. I'd love to have you in there if you're a podcaster who is looking to surround yourself with other podcasters. And then as always, I am happy to help you in any way I can. Maybe you feel stuck on something. Maybe it's analytics. Maybe it's something we talked about today. I want to strategize. What should I do? I will have my link in the show notes for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session. I would love to add value and help you avoid, hopefully, some, if not many, of the pitfalls that I've experienced over the years and years of doing this. I hope you are having a wonderful holiday season if you are celebrating these holidays, and I hope you're staying consistent with your podcast. I know this is a really easy time of year to let your foot off the gas. We don't have that much time left in the year. Finish strong. I hope this is the most successful year you've had in terms of subscribers, listens, and money made. And I hope you're enjoying the process. I definitely hope that for you. All right, as always, keep on podcasting, keep on crushing it, and I will talk to you all next week.